When you look at NAFTA versus USMCA, what are you most excited about for Ohio in the new legislation that is different from the old law?
Well, I'll tell you what the companies tell me, that they know it needs updated. The intellectual property protections that are in there are important to them. Opening up new markets for dairy and agriculture to Canada that were previously shut off. Those are a couple of the things that I've heard from businesses who have told me why they think it's important. But most of all, they're just mostly want to see it get done so that they can have stability and they know what the rules are so they can move forward.
Can you help us understand, though, exactly what the change is going to mean for men and women who work in heavy manufacturing, say in Ohio? Because the largest percentage, I believe, of the exports has to do with aircraft industry and the automobile industry. So what's really going to change for those folks who live in the Buckeye State?
Well, we think a bigger part of those automobiles need to be sourced within the trading partners, and more of that can happen in the United States, particularly as we're moving to electrically powered vehicles and to the automated driving systems. More of those kinds of things, I think, are the kinds of things that can be produced in Ohio. Everything that relates to the aircraft. Look, you've mentioned auto, aircraft. These are big industry sectors in Ohio, and the businesses who create those jobs in our state want this stability. They have worked with the Trump administration to get their issues addressed, and they are addressed. So as soon as this gets done, the better. More predictability. That's what they want.
Lieutenant Governor, back in July, you had tweeted, "We have a technology-infused economy. We need a trade deal that represents that," when you were talking about getting the USMCA ratified. Do you believe that this current USMCA that will be passed does represent the need for technology?
Yeah, look, the original trade agreement was done before essentially the internet existed and before the smartphone existed, certainly. And there just was nothing in there that was set for the modern economy. These provisions, as I've talked to businesses in our state who are in that space, they believe that this is a modernized trade agreement that addresses those issues.
Lieutenant Governor, one of the, I would argue, more significant changes in the USMCA are the labor protections that are put in place. There are obviously incentives there to make sure, at least on the Mexican side of things, that there are fair costs or equal wages there. And there's labor panels as well. And when you look at the original NAFTA, one of the biggest criticisms was that it drove down the cost of labor and it pushed jobs outside of the U.S. I'm wondering, as a result of some of these provisions in the USMCA, how many jobs do you expect to come back to Ohio?
Well, that's an impossible number for me to predict. I do believe, though, that when you're forcing Mexico to abide by higher labor standards, that creates a more competitive environment for American labor as it relates to Mexico. When you're forcing more portions of, say, automobiles, for example, to be produced, a higher percentage of that in Mexico, in Canada, in the United States, that is a pro-labor agreement. The fact that labor groups got on board with this, the fact that we have a bipartisan vote that we're expecting on this, I think exemplifies the fact that many of those things that people felt in a globalized economy left the working men and women of places like Ohio behind, that much of that has been addressed to their satisfaction. And as with any new agreement, we'll see what the long-term implications are. But when you compare it, because look, this is what we're comparing it to. What was it like versus the old NAFTA? Is it better than the old one? Everybody agrees on labor standards that we're better off.
All right, Ohio Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.